Welcome to this week's episode of Lagniappe. This is Rob Holbert. I am your host, along with some folks here. Everybody.
Ashley Trace.
Scott Johnson.
Brady Petrie.
Kyle Hamrick.
All right. Well, we got some interesting stuff in this week's paper. We've got a lot of coverage of Baldwin County politics. And speaking of which, we've got a pretty big story that we broke this week. Kyle and I have been working on about for a little bit of time, well over a month on this. Basically, we got a hold of some police reports that showed that there was a police call to a city-owned building on Labor Day, about 1 a.m. on Labor Day of this past year, and a waitress at the Tiki Bar across the street from the Coastal Resources building, across the canal, I should say, said she saw a naked man on the balcony at the Coastal Services building punching a woman and yelling, "Don't ever walk out on me," and then dragging her into a room.
And we should mention that Coastal Resources building is a city-owned building by Orange Beach that does like beach patrols and, and cleans up the nature trails and all that. So it's a government building.
It is a city-owned building. It is a government building. She tells the police, "Hey, that's what I saw." Cops go over there, and according to police reports, they encounter a man. They don't really say much. The police reports don't say a whole hell of a lot. That they encounter a person who tells them everything's okay, and they don't really follow up. They don't talk to the woman. They don't do anything. But there were subsequent supplemental reports that we received in which they don't sign these things. I guess they didn't sign these in particular, but they point out that it occurred at the Coastal Services building. There's a 911 transcript that talks about these issues of somebody, the woman being punched and being, yelling, "You don't ever walk out on me." And then someone says that they viewed the video. This is 3 days later, that they reviewed the body camera footage from the officers and realized that no one interacted with the alleged victim.
But at what point the man identified himself and said, "Hey, this is Tony Kennon."
This is not in the police reports, but this is what. So when they go and 4 days after the fact, they go and visit the victim, and she is listed as Miss Kennon. And so,
and then she says that everything's fine.
She says everything's dandy. Everything was okay.
Everything's fine.
Everything was 10-4.
No need to do a case.
Right.
It's all fine.
Everything's good. But what I have been told by people who work with the city, who are familiar with the body camera video, that went up there when the cops went up there and beat on the door, that the person on the other side didn't answer. The man just finally, they didn't open the door. He just yelled, "This is Tony Kennon, the mayor of Orange Beach."
Mm-hmm.
And that the officers more or less backed down to a degree, that they said something along the lines of, "We're here we got a domestic call," and that the person claiming to be Tony Kennon said, "Hey, my wife's right here. Everything's okay. You can talk to her if you want to," but she never said anything. They never went and talked to her. And the cops just basically backed down. In fact, when the officer went out to see Miss Kennon, they apologized for and they used the term negligence. They did not follow their procedures. They didn't go and talk to her in this circumstance. Okay, so you've got somebody who's claiming he's Tony Kennon behind this door on this building. Does that sound plausible? Well, then we also find out, Kyle and I have found out, that this office, Kennon has another office. He has a second office in this building, right where this occurred.
Yeah, that's on the end of the building, has a prime view of the Tiki Bar
and the water.
Yeah,
well,
the water and a balcony.
Think too, what officer is unless they really thought it was the mayor, it was going to let someone that they didn't see.
4 officers, by the way.
4 officers they didn't see just say, "Oh, I'm good." And
everything's
I'm in a city-owned building at 1:00 in the morning that's closed up, where you would never think anybody would be.
Yeah, and on a weekend, and he also a holiday.
He also allegedly told the officers through the door that he and his wife used this office as a weekend getaway. But
in a city-owned building.
But we have at least, I mean, I think at this point 4 or 5 people who have verified, including Jeff Boyd, who is running for mayor against Tony Kennon, verified that Kennon has an office there. In fact, Philip West, who runs the building, verified that Kennon has an office there. Why he has a second office, nobody knows. Yeah. Nobody will say.
He has not conducted any sort of official city business that we can find.
No one,
anyone.
right?
Not
nobody.
At the city council.
Nobody has said that we go there because he needs to have meetings about dolphins there or whatever it is. Beach patrol or any of this stuff.
And he comes in and out as he pleases. We've been told.
That's what they say.
He has access whenever he wants it.
Which, I mean, look, we've all covered a lot of city governments over the years. I don't know of any other situation where I've ever seen a mayor who has a second office anywhere that is a secret sort of like, this is my own office. It doesn't serve any sort of purpose. I don't know anybody that's ever had another office. Every mayor I've ever seen.
Where you go spend the night.
Even a spend the night office. Those are strange, but so we've asked Kennon over a week ago. We sent them, Kennon and the police chief and the city council, we sent them all questions well over a week ago. The only people who've answered any of that at all have been city council people.
Yeah.
And I think Jeff Boyd told you some interesting stuff. And
he said, which he didn't have any knowledge of the incident, the alleged domestic violence stuff, but he said that, the only time he's ever seen that office was shortly after the building opened,
which is in 2021. Yeah.
And that after that, he said that nobody from the city council has ever, been invited to that office. They've never had any meetings with the mayor in that office. They've been in the building, but they've never gotten that far to that office.
Well, I can tell you when I spoke with Philip West, who is the director of the Coastal Resources Center, he was audibly nervous. And when I asked him what Kennon does in the office, he just kept saying basically that he has to defer to their policy and that we need to talk to the mayor's office. So I'm supposed to call the mayor to ask him what he does there, which we've already done. We've already asked these questions and asked him what he does there, if he was there that night. But it goes, all this stuff goes on. And I mean, also Boyd at that time, Steve Brown, the chief of police, just announced his retirement. Yeah. And Boyd claiming that he told that Brown is retiring because of pressure being put on him.
Can't take the pressure.
Can't take the pressure being put on him by the administration. I don't know what the pressure's about. But, these officers, people, that are dealing with them, apparently some of the city employees that I spoke with say that Kennon routinely uses police officers to drive him around when he's been drinking from bar to bar. And, that's been something that I've heard from a multitude of people. So, all these things are questions. I mean, the one thing that's definitely not in question is that there is a police report. And these police reports, the police report that came in when it was first logged, the daily log of the report had no information whatsoever about this incident in it. Yeah. It just had a call. It's basically a timestamps and a place, and it didn't have a narrative. Everything it's actually called the daily report and narrative. Yeah. There's no narrative. Yeah. The narratives were all filed supplementally after the fact. And the narratives still never mentioned his name, never mentioned that this individual claimed to be Tony Kennon and that was in an office that is used by Tony Kennon. And it even really doesn't want to use Miss Kennon's, it doesn't use her first name. It calls her Miss Kennon.
Miss Kennon.
But, I think that whole thing is really, it's pretty shocking. And I don't know that that's, I don't know if it's outside of the realm of what people kind of expect from Tony Kennon. I know he's been the mayor of Orange Beach for a long time, but he's had a number of strange altercations over the years and strange behaviors.
And then this isn't the first time that he's had some connections to coastal resources.
That's right.
Stuff.
That's right.
Back in, I think it was 2019.
Yes.
There's a picture of him driving around on a coastal resources boat on Memorial Day.
Right.
And he said that he
with his family members on board.
With family, friends. And when we asked him, this was several years ago, when we asked him what he was doing, he said that he was just driving around to make sure everybody was following the law, doing some inspections,
right,
to make sure that everybody was keeping Orange Beach a family-friendly place.
And that he's the mayor and he can just take the boat and go putter around himself, he said, or he could commandeer a police officer to have him take him around, commandeer an officer. Rather than commandeer an officer, he would just go inspect himself and just get on the boat. And he just, I guess, happened to be inspecting the beach at that moment.
Yeah,
but you know, it's a really interesting situation, and I'm kind of surprised that they haven't at least had some kind of comment. I mean, we really had to contact them again and just say, just making sure you got these questions, because they have been dead silent.
Yeah.
But we'll keep after it. It's a fascinating story, and certainly one that we'd like to get more to the bottom of and what's going on. I'd really love to find out why he has that second office, and none of the city council people seem to understand it or know why.
Yeah, and I was told by the city clerk that she had no documents that showed a discussion of an office for Kennon during the planning process, and noted that the city council does not say that this office belongs to this person belongs to that person, this office belongs to that.
It seems like a tremendous waste of space to have an extra office for the mayor.
How close is City Hall to that building?
It's a few miles away.
It's a few miles away.
As Aldine learned, it's a small town. Yeah. So it's there's not a lot of space. I mean, Sandy Stimson doesn't have an extra office somewhere else that at least not that I'm aware of. So
but you can use your boat to get to the resource center.
You can do that. Yes.
Yeah, there's a dock.
Yeah, you can dock right there. So I don't know. It definitely raises a lot of questions, but why someone would call up the police at 1 a.m. and say, "Hey, I see a naked guy out there beating up a woman on the balcony of this building."
Yeah.
I'm sure that there are people who feel like there's a conspiracy afoot because the race, the mayor's race is coming up. But this police report was generated almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And there is a video, and the police report definitely says there's a video of this.
Yeah.
Orange Beach has a video of this. In fact, from what I understand, there are 4 separate videos of this, 4 separate body camera videos.
One for every
officer that was there.
Yeah.
So they can go look at that themselves.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are going to take a quick break. We'll come right back and talk a little bit about mayors on this side of the bay.
Lagniappe daily is on the beat. For just $6.50, it's all the news, keeping local folks in the loop. Oh, Lagniappe daily, every single morning, catching up on stories while the coffee's pouring. The local troops on every page, news for the folks of every age.
It's just $6.50 a month for Mobile's daily news, Lagniappe Daily. Get signed up now at lagniappemobile.com and help keep Mobile funky.
Oh, down in our Alabama town, Lagniappe Daily's on the beat. For just $6.50, it's all the news, keeping local folks in the loop. Oh, Lagniappe Daily, every single morning, catching up on stories while the coffee's pouring. The local troops on every page, news for the folks of every age.
And we are back. So my segue was kind of messed up. We're not talking about mayors on this side of the bay. We're talking about would-be mayors. Would-be mayors.
Yeah.
Brady, you were out last night Tuesday night at a mayoral forum again, in which they got all four of them. There was a forum the other day that just Connie Hudson and Paul Prime showed up for, but this was all four of the remaining mayoral candidates. So how did that go?
It was pretty interesting.
No fist fights.
I mean, yeah, no fist fights yet. But I mean, the tone of Prine and Drummond was more aggressive, I think, as opposed to previous, which I mean, Drummond hasn't really participated in forums to this point in person. She's just sent videos because she's been at the legislature and everything else. But it was very interesting. I thought, I mean, obviously crime again dominated was a number one topic that was discussed. And but another thing I thought really was interesting was the fact that and the way this forum worked, it was hosted by the NAACP, Stand Up Mobile, and a couple of other organizations, and they got questions submitted from the community. And aside from crime, the most popular topic was education.
Okay,
and which was interesting because the city doesn't have any direct impact. I mean, they can partner with the schools to do things. I mean, they could, possibly allocate funding. The city council allocates funding all the time for certain schools in their districts, but a lot of questions focused on, how are you going to impact education? And there were some questions about tying education to workforce development and things like that. But again, for the most part, mayors, or at least the mayor of Mobile, doesn't have any impact on schools.
Did any of them bring up the creation of a city school system?
The creation of a city school system was not brought up, which I thought, was probably a smart move on their parts. I mean, I know it's been talked about before, but I think, once you open up that can of worms, you kind of then have to explain how you're going to pay for it. And all that
I mean, that's a massive leap.
Huge undertaking.
That's a huge undertaking.
I mean, even Mayor Simpson explored that at one time. He had a committee on it, and then after looking into it, it was just
too expensive,
abandoned ship.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think, that was, I think that certainly the Mobile County Public School System is a pretty monolithic organization. However, I'm not sure that Mobile breaking away from it is a great plan.
Yeah, probably not. But I mean, again, that was a huge topic, and to what extent these mayors will have an impact on the education system, nobody knows.
Well, I mean, I do think they could do stuff like Keith Blackwood just did with the truancy program. Yeah. Obviously, they're working with them on that. So, I mean,
and I thought, of all the candidates, Spiro Chirigaudis had the most logical answer, which was, the city could look to try to create some kind of better preschool initiative and try to do something with that, which he didn't go into much detail about it, but that by far to me was the most logical response to a question that.
Yeah, I mean, the city can only kind of in that area affect education through pressure and lobbying, I guess, to some extent. I mean, it's really up to the superintendent and the school board to do all that stuff. So, were there some questions about things that the mayor actually can directly affect?
Yeah, there were, and one of them was specifically posed to Paul Prine about how do you plan to clean up Mobile as far as litter and blight goes, and his response was, you need more municipal officers. You need more officers to go in and enforce the codes.
More police officers.
Which has been his
answer to almost everything.
Right, pretty much everything.
I mean, I'm not knocking him, but it is kind of,
that's kind of where we're getting to with a lot of these forums, is it's kind of just a repeat.
I feel like the questions are over and over again, the same kinds of questions, and it's like, I would love to see some different questions asked about, some other ideas and plans of what they have, because I mean, I think at this point, I get it. I'm sure everybody, all of their political advisors are saying, hey, look, crime is number one thing. Crime is the number one thing, which it is, I guess, but as I've said before, it's going to be crime no matter what. And we're going to have crime is going to be on the agenda, but there's a whole lot of other things going on toward running the city. And
which I did think it was interesting that each candidate at the end was asked, for their opinion on what's the most pressing issue. And 3 out of the 4, Chirigaudis, Hudson, and Prine all said crime.
Right.
But Drummond said education and workforce development is the number one issue when it comes to, the next mayor who takes office there. So I thought that was interesting, a candidate actually going away from crime and, giving a different approach. Now, I'm not saying she's right one way or the other, but that was interesting. And there was a good crowd for the forum last night, which was also encouraging. I mean, getting people to go out on a Tuesday night to.
Where was it? Where was it done?
It was at New Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church out on Old Shell Road.
Yeah.
But I mean, it was very well organized, and I mean, like I said, it's not their fault that the questions submitted by the public have kind of been the same over and over again.
Well, but, I mean, people don't go to the other ones, and they probably don't pay attention to them, and there certainly are the questions do get repetitive, I think.
Well, I mean, I agree. I mean, yes, the mayor can't do anything about education, but I do think, I mean, when you Google or ask ChatGPT what the pros and cons of living in Mobile are, a terrible education system is one of the cons.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that definitely affects our economic development, and there needs to be more pressure put. I mean, I know there's only so much they can do, but I mean, at least act like you're putting pressure on them.
The mayor can. I mean, there's no doubt the mayor can, but it's going to require standing up and saying, hey, Cressel Threadgill, what are you doing? Or, there's going to have to be at some point, there are going to have to be instances. And I mean, if you want to be an education mayor and you think these things are not being handled properly, there are going to be times at which you run up against the city, the school system in that regard.
Which, I mean, again,
and so nobody's really shown much interest in doing that at this point.
No, and it also, depends on how willing Threadgill and the school system is to cooperate with the city. I mean,
That's
I think
the point.
The main reason they cooperated with Keith Blackwood and everything is because truancy affects their state report card.
Right.
And so I don't know how willing they're going to be. If say Spiro or Hudson Prine, whoever gets elected, if they put their foot down and say, hey, we want to see this.
Sure. We'd rather see you not spend $100 million on football stadiums, but spend it on this, that kind of thing. We did have a mayoral
candidate who suggested buying Lad back.
We did have that. Yeah, his campaign did not get off the ground. Yeah, it was fizzled. It was a great idea to buy it back.
But we've got a new forum. We got another forum next Tuesday. I think it's at the VS Senior Center, I believe, next Tuesday. And so I think that one's being hosted by Fox 10.
Do you get any sense that there is...
Will it be televised?
I believe it'll be live streamed.
Do you get any sense of urgency at this point from the candidates as we get with, closer to a month out from I think we're about 40 days or so, 50 days out from the election.
I think yesterday was exactly 7 weeks from the election. I did kind of get a sense of urgency from Prine last night because I think, and I mean, just looking at the fundraising totals, I mean, he's in last place which again, we've said it time and time again, money's not everything.
Right.
But I did get some urgency from him, and I did sense a little bit of urgency from Connie last night. I mean, she was very assertive. Up to this point in forum, she's kind of been, I have the most experience, I have all the connections and everything, but last night she was very assertive in what she planned to do. And so I think there was some urgency there. But, Spiro and Drummond were kind of more laid back in the forum.
Well, I mean, I definitely think Connie and Prine take more voters away from each other. They split the anti-Sandy voters.
Right.
So I don't know, are there enough pro-Sandy? I want Spiro, Sandy, that direction.
Yeah.
Is there that block bigger still than splitting the block between however they split it? I don't know, but
right. I mean, that kind of remains to be seen. And I mean, I'm almost hesitant to say, that Prine would drop out, but I don't think Prine's ego is going to let him drop out of this race. I think he's going to see it through the finish line for better or worse.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to split it three ways, in terms of the,
I mean, and Prine does have a lot of grassroots vocal supporters, but I wonder how many of them actually live in the city, or if they are more Saraland support, where he's Saraland or Satsuma? Saraland.
And see, I haven't been able to gauge that based, on these forums, because they are by far and away the loudest.
Right.
But I don't know how far that net is that Prine's got for his supporters. I don't know. And I mean,
I know say on the Seymour, which I know is just anecdotal, it seems pretty evenly spread. I mean,
I don't have a real sense at this point who's
either.
winning, who's got the best chance. I don't really have that sense at this point. It is there's nobody who just stands out and to me is saying this person is head and shoulders above everybody else winning the race. I don't know.
I mean, I do. Clue. Like, I'll say just like a family in my neighborhood, they're split. The younger ones are going for Spiro and the older ones are going for Connie, in one family,
That was an interesting thing that I did notice because, last night at the forum, you had all of the candidates' support groups, sectioned off pretty much in the crowd. And I did notice that among Spiro supporters, they were mostly on the younger side.
Right.
And, whereas Connie had on the older side, Drummond had, the black vote or the black support and everything. And then in Prime, his group, clearly stood out. They were all wearing the shirts and everything else. So, I mean, I did think that was interesting that Spiro had, most of the younger crowd there.
Yeah.
So.
I would definitely say whenever I've been around people in their 30s and 40s that they have been, of course, they're also mid-towners or Spring Hill people or whatever, but people in that age range seem to be much more leaning towards Spiro. But
But I think you have the same thing
purely,
in West Mobile
anecdotal.
with Connie,
Yeah.
and in the newly annexed areas. So, I mean, that's going to be really interesting to see how that breaks down when we get the total.
Yeah, and I mean, that's me standing in a room with 15, 20 people. That doesn't mean a whole lot.
And I mean, younger people are also tend to not vote as much or often. So does that help or hurt Spiro? I don't know.
I don't know. It's going to be a fascinating race. I think it is. It's it can break so many different ways, and even
there's so many different dynamics: the racial, the geographical, the aged. So I mean,
Stimson, anti-Stimson.
Yeah.
And I mean, even if Prine does not manage to make his way into a runoff, he could
be the spoiler.
He could play a huge role in who does, and so that's or even I mean, even if there is not a runoff, it could be. I mean, that would be. I still think that would be very tough to see these four candidates run and somebody get 50% of the vote. But that would be very shocking to me. I don't see it happening. But
I don't see it happening either. But I mean, in terms of if it inevitably goes to a runoff, the most fascinating thing is going to be who or if Paul Prine throws his support behind. Like that is just going to be. That's going to be fascinating.
I mean, there's no way he throws it behind Spiro.
I wouldn't think so. Yeah.
Can't imagine
at this point.
All right. Well, we're getting close, so that time will come before you know it. We're going to take another quick break, and we'll come back and talk about the Clotilda.
Just $6.50 a month for Mobile's daily news, Lagniappe Daily. Get signed up now at lagniappemobile.com and help keep Mobile funky.
And we are back. Kyle, you have a story this week on the Clotilda and what's going on with it.
Well, there's nothing that's going on.
Nothing going on. All right. Thanks, Kyle. That's we'll move on.
So, last August, the Alabama Historical Commission came down and presented a study that basically told Africatown they could either leave the Clotilda, the last slave ship to enter the U.S., in the river where it is now, and just
buried in mud,
and keep doing tours up there, have like a monument to it, or they could spend a ton of money,
tens of millions of dollars,
to lift the ship out of the water, risk damaging it beyond repair,
or just disappearing like a dandelion in the wind, right?
Just turning to dust,
right?
And they could lift it up and put it on display in Africatown.
Yeah.
And since that study came out, there has been no movement on the Clotilda whatsoever.
Yeah. Okay.
The plans are stuck in the mud. There's still plans that people that people have in mind that they want to see done, but folks in Africatown told me that there have been no other meetings, no other conversations on this issue whatsoever.
The replica is the way to go.
That's what I've heard too.
I mean, we build ships here. Why not?
Yeah, I would agree with that too. But then you've quoted Ben Grains thinks it's ridiculous not to take the thing out of the mud and do it.
Can you not do both?
Yeah.
I mean, the replica boat would be a cool attraction to go walk.
It sure would be.
It would be
somber, but also yes.
Yeah, we've got all of the plans, all the drawings that made the original, so you could replicate it with ease. But some of the descendants think that it should just kind of stay where it is as like a somber kind of hallowed ground. Some think they should lift a portion of it out of the water.
The descendants should make the decision for sure. But but I think it would, if you're just looking for driving attendance numbers, having a replica to walk through and be able to touch. I mean, I know they've got the great interactive stuff, but
right.
still, you know.
But to have an actual thing that you
could
see,
incorporate the interactive stuff, the electronic stuff.
That's what I've been told would really help, draw more people to Africatown.
Yeah.
And put
Which
more
would
money
help
in the
everyone.
community. Help everybody.
Yep.
So.
Well, we'll see if anything gets done at any
if
point
it gets
soon.
Done.
Yeah. Scott, you have another story this week, kind of continuing along with the stories you've been doing about the clinics and law firms involved with one another. Tell us what's the latest on that.
Yeah, I was able to actually reach out to the mysterious John Baker, who's the local counsel represents patients from the South Alabama Medical and Rehab Center, where patients actually retain him during intake.
You finally got in touch with him.
Finally got in touch with him. Couldn't even...
At some point, maybe we even thought it was a pseudonym, but we weren't sure. You couldn't find out who this guy is, and then you finally got in touch with him.
Yep, and he assured me that he was a real person.
He's a real guy,
and that basically he kind of echoed everything. I've spoken with several of the law firm is called Vasic Law Group, founded by a 27-year-old named William Vasic, but he formerly it kind of questioned as to whether he currently is operating the medical clinics where he's now retaining clients.
Right.
I've spoken with several of these lawyers. And all of them kind of give me the same story. They responded to an online ad and then basically just said that they'd, work with any cases they pushed his way.
Yeah.
So he set up this operation, multiple states, Alabama, there's one in Indiana, so these clinics are everywhere. And these lawyers, as far as best as I can tell, just taking the word for it, they really had no idea who this guy is, that he was involved in the clinics that they're working clients in. Yeah. And it's raises a lot of questions on legal or professional boundaries, because you got law firms interested in higher settlements and being directly connected to the clinics who can inflate the bills or charge more.
All these clinics are connected to a guy who has been in big trouble with the law before, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with a guy who had a huge RICO case from the FBI, and from what I understand, maybe even at one point had left the country to avoid prosecution. Planbeck,
Michael Kent Planbeck, chiropractor used to be out of Texas, now he's in Florida. But, like you said, he's faced federal charges. He's been sued by Allstate.
But his name he's linked with all these clinics.
Yeah, because he's created this model. This is his kind of doing. He was doing this in the late 90s, as best I can tell. Just different strings pulling. He didn't have all the same tools he has now. But
and the basic gist of it is, you get an accident, somebody calls you and says, "Come in, we're going to take care of you." You have to sign a deal with a lawyer at this clinic. You get, at the end of the day, the lawyers get some part of whatever settlement there is. The clinic gets some part of the settlement. You get some part of the settlement. That's generally the gist of it, right?
Yep, generally the gist.
And so, but Baker took a pretty strong approach to this. He said, "Look, you guys think we're doing bad stuff. It's really the big guys who are doing the bad stuff, right?"
Yeah. They had a lot of things to say about why this is even necessary.
Yeah.
It's because, we have to offer this way for accessible legal services because, the insurance companies are trying to bar people left and right from claims.
Yeah.
They, and then the big law firms are trying to crowd out anybody else that's trying to get into the market. And
he likened himself to Robin Hood.
Yeah, he said, "I'm Robin Hood. I'm a David-faced Goliath. I'm Atticus Finch."
Atticus Finch. He was Atticus Finch. Yes. So anyway, it was that was definitely my favorite quote in the whole story. It was great. That he's Atticus Finch, and so it continues though. There's just it's a really fascinating story that just keeps rolling. It does seem like, I get their argument, but it does just kind of seem awfully strange that they are managing to get people's numbers after these accidents and call them.
Yeah, I need to actually go back and write another thing on this, but this was actually back in 2008. Bill Riles, found another Planbeck.
Yeah,
he's not new here. He opened a clinic directly next to the Mobile Police Department.
Yeah,
and they were sending over an employee every day to go and grab and crash
police reports. Yeah,
and they were pulling the information out and calling them. The police department changed their policy at that time.
That's why. Yeah, that's one of the reasons we can't see the reports anymore, is because they told us at the time, that was, when we first started the paper, we could go down there and get the police reports and look at the narrative and do all this stuff. And they pulled all that because they said the lawyers were coming in and, I wouldn't think 15 years later we'd be writing about these people who did that. But yes, that's exactly what happened.
You can thank Planbeck and his Kennon for doing that.
They really blocked us out of actually getting police reports. So it's really bizarre stuff. And then I guess one last thing, we've got the airport announced this week yet another delay, right?
It is delayed, and hopefully that's not an omen for all the flights that are going to eventually fly out of there. They originally it was scheduled to open in spring of 2026. They came out.
I think originally it was going to open in 25.
It was fall of 25. That was when it was originally, and they pushed it back
originally we would be on the cusp of having the airport open,
right? And then they pushed it back to spring 2026, and then now it is fall 2026.
And fall they mean like November,
probably November, like December 31st.
Yeah. So it's
like that. But they pushed it back, and they're claiming that they're doing this in order to keep it within budget and make sure all of the work is done right and everything. And so it'll be fall 2026.
I'm still a little confused on that one. How it taking longer is going to make the budget lower, but we'll see. It is a little troubling that it's taken so long, that it's so far over time. But hopefully everything will work out good.
Maybe so.
Well, that's it for this week, folks. We just finished up for this week, and we'll talk to y'all next Thursday on the next Lagniappe Pod. Thank you.
Bye. The Lagniappe Pod is a Something Extra publishing production. Executive producers are Rob Holbert and Ashley Trice. Music is by Some Pulse Sounds and Electro Animals. Only subscribers like you have access to this podcast. Tell your friends they can sign up at my.lagniappemobile.com. For advertising opportunities, please call 251-450-4466.